The air is thick with perfume and smoke, a blend of roses and torches, as you stand in the heart of Paris, 1533. Tonight the city glows not with devotion, but with the heat of celebration. The wedding of the decade, perhaps of the century, is underway. Nobles crowd into the palace, their jewels catching the candlelight like tiny captured suns. Musicians breathe life into the hall, the violins trembling like nerves. You can almost taste the sweetness of the wine spilled across the marble floor. But beneath it all, something rots. You can feel it. Because this isn't just a wedding. It's a transaction, one that will mark your soul forever. And you, dear listener, probably won't survive this one. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me your location and what time it is right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The laughter of courtiers echoes like a taunt as you glide down the great hall. Your gown, layers of velvet the colour of old wine, rustles around you. Every eye follows you, some admiring, most calculating. You are 14, a Medici by name, a stranger by everything else. Your uncle, Pope Clement VII, arranged this union with the French prince, Henry of Orleans, to stitch peace between Italy and France. But peace is just another word kings whisper when they mean control. The banquet stretches late into the night. Roasted peacock, sugared almonds and song, all masking the tension that ripples beneath the glitter. You notice Henry barely looks your way, his gaze drifting instead towards someone else across the table. She's older, poised, and wrapped in moonlight silk. You don't know her name yet, but you will. The court calls her Diane de Poitiers, and she will soon make your heart her stage. As the wine flows, you wonder if the French ever stop pretending. You understand enough to sense the mockery behind their laughter. They call you the little Italian, a papist, a banker's niece dressed like a duchess. But you've been raised in worse rooms. You've heard priests whisper spells over the dying. You've seen alchemists grind strange powders that turn flesh pale as marble. The Medici blood carries secrets, ones that smell faintly of myrrh and mercury. When the music fades and the guests drift toward their chambers, you are led through a labyrinth of corridors to your own. A chamber glowing with hundreds of candles, each flame trembling like a nervous heart. They say the royal wedding night is sacred, but you sense the room itself watching you. You're told Henry will come soon. You wait, hands folded, pulse hammering. Outside, the city's bells toll midnight. He arrives, tall and silent, with the stiffness of someone fulfilling a duty rather than entering a marriage. The air between you is awkward, heavy, almost ceremonial. He says nothing. He does what is expected. When it's over, he leaves without a word and the door closes softly behind him. You stare at the candle beside your bed, the wick curling into itself like a dying secret. You are married now, but not chosen. In the hours that follow, servants whisper through the walls. You catch bits of gossip, the scrape of goblets, the murmur of laughter from Diane's chambers. You learn your husband's footsteps sound different when he walks there. Faster, lighter, almost human. Historians still argue whether love or politics shaped that night, but for you, both feel like poisons. One sweet, one bitter. The marriage will make you queen one day, but it will also plant a seed. Tonight's humiliation becomes a wound that festers for decades, until it bleeds into history as massacre. For now, you blow out the last candle and lie awake, staring into darkness that seems to breathe. Somewhere outside, a dog howls and Paris exhales. In that exhale, your childhood disappears. The girl from Florence is gone, replaced by a name the world will soon learn to fear. Catherine de' Medici, the woman who never forgot her wedding night. You wake, years earlier beneath the Florentine sun, a child surrounded by whispers. Florence, the cradle of art and treachery, has never been kind to orphans, even those born to power. You are Catherine de' Medici, daughter of Lorenzo de' Medici, niece of popes, heir to a fortune that might as well be cursed. Your parents are long dead, victims of plague and politics, and their passing leaves you to the mercy of the church. You grow up in a series of borrowed rooms, guarded by nuns whose smiles are stitched with fear. Even as a child, you sense something monstrous about your destiny. They call you Duchessina, the little duchess. Pretty title, cruel reality. Your family's fortune attracts enemies like perfume draws flies. The Medici name is both shield and target. When Florence erupts in rebellion against papal control, the mob surrounds your convent. For days you hear the roar of the crowd outside, the stone walls trembling under the force of their hatred. You are barely 10, yet you sit by the window, calm, tracing invisible symbols on the glass. Maybe it's prayer, maybe it's habit, but one of the guards swears he saw you smile when the rebels retreated. Historians still argue whether the young Catherine possessed any real power then, or if fear simply made her seem supernatural. Either way, the legend takes root early. Florence begins to whisper that the Medici girl is protected by demons, or worse, by the Pope himself. Both rumours are dangerous, but one of them might be true. When the siege lifts, you are sent to Rome, to the care of your uncle, Pope Clement VII. The Vatican, with its gold and shadow, becomes your playground. Priests teach you Latin and silence. You learn to read faces as easily as scripture. You see men die from poisons that leave no mark, and women vanish into marriages that look suspiciously like prisons. You learn to survive in a world that prays with one hand and stabs with the other. One night, while walking through the papal gardens, you overhear two alchemists whispering over a bronze bowl of mercury. Their words are thick with curiosity and dread. They speak of celestial influence, of binding one's fate to a star. You ask them, innocent and curious, which star governs you? One of them laughs softly and says, "The one that never forgives." You remember that line for the rest of your life. Your education is unusual for a girl: mathematics, astronomy, the occult sciences that most nobles dismiss as folly. But the Medici never believed in separating God from mystery. You learn that power isn't only in swords or crowns, it's in knowing what others fear. A tutor once tells you, "Men who fear witches rarely question queens." You tuck that truth into your heart like a blade in silk. When you turn 14, your uncle announces your betrothal to Henry, the second son of the King of France. You've never met him, but the message is clear. You're not being chosen for love, but for leverage. The French see you as the Pope's gift, a living alliance wrapped in satin. You practice your smile in the mirror, the one that hides emotion, the one you'll need for the rest of your life. As you travel north through the Alps, the air grows thinner, colder. You leave behind the scent of orange blossoms and the rhythm of Italian speech for a language that sounds like ice cracking. The French court is waiting, but it won't welcome you. Florence was cruel, yes, but France will teach you humiliation in layers. Still, when you look out over the endless grey countryside, you feel something stir. You tell yourself this marriage will be your escape, your stage. You will outlast them all, the kings, the mistresses, the ministers. The girl they underestimate will one day decide who lives and who dies. But tonight, as snow gathers on the carriage window, you whisper a prayer in Italian just in case. You pray that the French never learn what the Medici taught their daughters, to smile when they taste poison. You arrive in France under grey skies, the kind that seem to soak straight into your bones. The castles are taller, colder, and smell faintly of damp stone and arrogance. The court of Francis I glitters on the surface like a jewel, but underneath it crawls with gossip and rivalry. You quickly learn that in France words are weapons, and your accent, thick with the vowels of Florence, is a wound they love to poke. Every corridor you walk through feels like a test, every smile a trap. The king himself, Francis, greets you with charm that borders on performance. He calls you ma petite Italienne, the little Italian, and means it as both compliment and warning. He admires your poise, your lineage, but his courtiers whisper that you bring too much Rome and too little France. Even your clothes are wrong. Florentine silks, too dark, too severe. When you curtsy, you feel 1,000 eyes judge the angle of your knee. Your new husband, Henry, the Duke of Orleans, stands beside his father, silent and unsmiling. His eyes are distant, already belonging to someone else. The rumour drifts quickly. He is devoted to a woman twice his age, Diane de Poitiers, the widow of a nobleman who once served the king. You catch the name, but not yet the meaning. You tell yourself it's fine. All marriages in this world are arrangements. You just didn't expect yours to be arranged around someone else's passion. Your wedding day is a masterpiece of excess, an empire built out of sugar and gold. The cathedral smells of lilies and incense. The choir's voices rise like the ghosts of every ambition you've ever buried. You repeat the vows in careful French, words that bind you not to love, but to duty. And as the ring slides onto your finger, you glimpse Henry's expression. polite detachment, the look of a man attending a play he'd rather skip. Historians still argue whether Henry ever truly hated you or merely pitied you, but from the start his affection belongs elsewhere. You try to ignore it, focusing instead on learning the rules of this foreign world. You practice your curtsy before mirrors, study etiquette manuals, and memorize which noble family secretly despises which. You become fluent not just in French, but in the language of survival, silence, observation, and timing. Still, your loneliness is unbearable. The French courtiers mock your appetite for books and astronomy, calling you the scholar bride. You write letters to your old tutors in Italy, begging for texts on alchemy and astrology. Late at night you trace constellations from your window, wondering which one rules your fate now. You recall the alchemist's words, the one that never forgives, and it feels more like prophecy with each passing night. Your only true ally in those early years is the king. Francis seems to pity your isolation, and occasionally invites you to his study, where he boasts about his art collection, and shows you Italian paintings looted from your homeland. You nod, smile, and laugh at the right times, even as something tightens in your chest. This is how you survive, through performance. But court gossip is a beast that never sleeps. It twists your silence into rumour. They whisper that you're barren, that you dabble in dark arts, that you keep potions hidden among your perfumes. You overhear servants joke that your womb has been cursed by Florentine witches. You want to scream, but instead, you laugh softly and let the myth grow. Fear, after all, can be useful. There is a saying among the Medici, if they fear you, they will not kill you quickly. You repeat it like prayer. Sometimes, late in the night, you walk alone through the palace gardens, the moon turning the fountains into mercury. You think about your parents, your city, and how far from Florence you've fallen. Yet something inside you refuses to break. You tell yourself that power is patient, that even poison takes time to bloom, and when Henry finally walks past you without seeing you, the faintest trace of Diane's perfume trailing behind him, you realise the truth. This marriage isn't your cage, it's your classroom. Every slight, every humiliation is another lesson in control. You just have to wait, and you have always been very, very good at waiting. You meet her in the gardens one morning beneath a trellis of climbing roses so pale they almost look translucent. Diane de Poitiers, your husband's mistress, his muse, his shadow. She's older than you by nearly 20 years, but you wouldn't know it by looking at her. Her beauty isn't the kind that fades, it's the kind that commands. Every motion she makes feels rehearsed by the gods themselves. The court calls her the moon, and suddenly you understand why. Because next to her, you're always in eclipse. She greets you with a curtsy so graceful it borders on insult. Her tone is warm, her words kind, but her eyes study you like you're a painting she might appraise before deciding where to hang it. You smile and return the courtesy, your voice steady even though your stomach feels like it's filled with bees. She tells you that Henry speaks of you fondly, which you know is a lie, and that she hopes you'll find happiness here. The word hope lands like poisoned dust. From that moment, she becomes an uninvited echo in your life. At meals, Henry's gaze drifts toward her. At hunts, she rides beside him. When the court whispers about beauty, they mean hers. You learn that she manages his correspondence, chooses his attire, even advises him on political matters. You're the wife, but she is the partner. You're the crown, but she's the soul beneath it. Historians still argue whether Diane's power came from intellect or seduction, but for you, it hardly matters. What matters is that she exists, and that Henry smiles when she enters a room. You can bear neglect, humiliation, even exile, but not that smile. That's the wound that never closes. In the evenings, you walk through the corridors and catch reflections of her in every polished surface. Her pearls gleam like a mocking constellation. One night, you stand before your mirror and imitate her gestures, how she tilts her head, how her fingers trace the rim of a goblet. You practice until your arm aches. If you can't defeat her, maybe you can learn from her. You will become her mirror, the reflection that bites back. The French court watches the triangle unfold with the same fascination they reserve for executions. You're pitied, yes, but also mocked. Servants gossip that Diane taught you how to please your husband, a cruel myth that burns through the palace like wildfire. One maid repeats it within your hearing, and for the first time in your life you slap someone. Hard. The echo of that strike feels like reclaiming a piece of yourself. You begin to build your own network, quietly, carefully. You befriend astrologers, herbalists, and women of the lower court. You ask questions about medicines that alter moods, perfumes that influence dreams, potions that mimic affection. You never say the word poison, but it lingers in every conversation like a scent no one admits to smelling. You study people the way alchemists study metals, learning what breaks them, what bends them, what makes them burn. One night, while Henry's away, you wander into the royal library. The flickering candlelight reveals a book left open on the table. Diane's handwriting in the margins. She's been reading Ovid's Metamorphoses, the stories of women turned into trees, birds, and monsters to escape men or gods. You touch the page and feel a strange pity. Maybe she's not the enemy. Maybe she's just another woman trapped in a story written by men. But the pity doesn't last. Not when you remember how she holds your husband's arm as if she owns it. There's a superstition at court that whoever captures the king's favour must guard against the moon's jealousy. You laugh when you hear it. If Diane is the moon, then you, Catherine, will become the night itself. Endless, patient, inevitable. That evening, as you sit alone, you lift a goblet of wine and whisper to the empty room, "Let them laugh now. One day they'll call me monstrous, and I'll take it as a compliment." And somewhere, far away in another chamber, the moonlight spills across Henry's sheets, and you swear you can smell your rival's perfume even in your dreams. The wedding night is supposed to mark the beginning of a royal union, a night of blessing, of alliances sealed not only in ink but in flesh. Yet for you, Catherine, that night becomes something far stranger. 3 nights folded into one, as if fate itself couldn't decide which version of you to keep. The candles burn low in your bridal chamber, throwing slow shadows across silk sheets that smell faintly of lavender and dread. You're 14, wrapped in layers of lace that feel more like armour than adornment. The air hums with expectation and the weight of eyes you cannot see. When Henry finally enters, he doesn't look at you. He looks through you. His movements are practiced, mechanical, the gestures of a man fulfilling a duty imposed by others. His touch is brief, his words fewer still. You try to imagine affection, to summon tenderness, but all you feel is the cold draught sneaking through the cracks of the palace walls. He leaves soon after, without a word, and for a heartbeat, you wonder if you dreamed the entire thing. But then, an hour later, he returns, only this time, not alone. The sound of her perfume arrives before she does. Diane de Poitiers stands at the door, calm, radiant, draped in a robe of black velvet. She murmurs something to Henry, too soft for you to catch, and he nods. She doesn't cross the threshold, not entirely, but she lingers, watching. It is she who instructs him, her voice low and certain. The court will later pretend not to know this happened, but servants gossip for decades about that moment. The queen in bed, the mistress by the door, the prince caught between. 3 lives bound together in a silence that drips thicker than blood. Historians still argue whether this scene is fact or scandal, a tale whispered too long to die. Some say Diane was merely there to reassure Henry, the nervous groom. Others claim she directed the entire encounter, ensuring the royal marriage produced heirs while keeping her claim intact. You will never confirm the truth. You will only remember the feeling that you weren't a bride, but a witness to your own humiliation. Later, when Henry leaves for the final time, the chamber smells of extinguished candles and bitter incense. You lie there, the sheets cold, and realize that you have been visited 3 times in one night. By duty, by envy, and by something darker still, awakening. The first visit took your innocence, the second your pride, the third planted the seed of vengeance. You think of your Medici blood, of Florence's lessons about power and patience, and you begin to understand what kind of queen you'll need to become. Outside, Paris sleeps, unaware that something ancient has just been reborn in its palace walls. You rise from the bed and walk barefoot to the window. The moon hangs low over the Seine, pale and pitiless. You whisper to it, not a prayer but a promise. You may have him now, Diane, but someday everything he touches will belong to me. The next morning, the court celebrates what they believe is a successful union. Musicians play, priests bless, and courtiers smirk. You smile too, wearing serenity like a mask. Inside, however, the world has shifted. You notice how easily the king laughs when he sees Diane, how Henry's shoulders soften in her presence. You file every gesture away, every glance, every sigh. Love may be her weapon, but patience will be yours. That night, you sleep again in the same room, now heavy with memories you wish you could unlearn. The candles have burned down to puddles of wax, their reflections rippling on the silver mirrors. You stare at them until your vision blurs and see, just for a moment, 3 figures overlapping, yourself, Henry, and Diane, like a single spectre caught between mercy and revenge. You know, with a certainty that chills you, that this triangle will not end in peace. In the years that follow, the young bride becomes a quiet observer. Catherine, the foreign duchess who says little but sees everything. You learn to move through the French court like smoke, shapeless, invisible, impossible to grasp. While others gossip and gamble, you study. You memorize the rhythm of footsteps in the halls, the tone shifts in conversations, the power currents that flow unseen beneath laughter. You realize that the throne is not the seat of power, it's merely the stage. The true control lies behind the curtain, in whispers, in timing, in knowledge. And so you begin your education anew, not as a queen, but as an alchemist apprentice. The French mock your fascination with the occult, but they never stop watching. You surround yourself with astrologers and mathematicians, their charts littered with strange sigils. You consult Nostradamus himself. Yes, that Nostradamus, who peers at you over candlelight and murmurs that your destiny will bathe in blood and glory. You smile, politely, as if he were predicting a change in weather. But his words stay lodged in your chest like a splinter. Historians still argue whether your interest in astrology was genuine belief or clever manipulation. Perhaps it was both. You understand what others do not. That belief itself is a form of control. When people think the stars favour you, they fear offending you. When they fear you, they obey. And so you let the rumours grow. You commission horoscopes for every royal birth, every treaty, every battle. Each time you speak of fate as if you've already seen it unfold. Sometimes it feels as though you have. But knowledge, like mercury, is toxic when mishandled. You begin experimenting, not with cauldrons and incantations, but with herbs and minerals. Your Italian attendants procure ingredients discreetly. Belladonna, arsenic, and a curious powder from Venice that can make a man's heart stop without leaving a mark. You store them in ornate bottles, each labelled in Latin, each disguised among perfumes. You tell yourself it's only for protection. The Medici bloodline always prepares for betrayal. Still, when you mix them, when you watch the smoke curl like a serpent, you feel something awaken inside you, a calmness, almost peace. Meanwhile, Henry grows distant. Or perhaps he simply grows into the man Diane always wanted him to be. She directs his wardrobe, his correspondence, even the crest on his armour. Once, you catch a glimpse of him wearing her initials, intertwined with yours, etched on his sleeve. The court calls it a symbol of harmony. You know better. It's a claim, a signature on your humiliation. So you turn elsewhere for satisfaction, not in romance, but in strategy. You start advising on political matters, carefully, softly. You study France's alliances, the merchants' debts, the fragile line between the crown and the church. You learn to speak to ministers in their own tongue, always feigning modesty while nudging them toward your own ends. They think you are timid. They mistake silence for ignorance. That's your greatest alchemy, turning underestimation into armour. Late at night, when the castle quiets, you sit at your desk surrounded by maps and constellations. You draw patterns connecting stars to cities, kingdoms to destinies. It's absurd, you know, yet something about it feels true. Perhaps the universe has a structure as ruthless as court politics, every movement precise, every consequence inevitable. You begin to suspect that your pain, your patience, your strange fascination with death and prediction are all ingredients in a larger design. You still send gifts to Diane, perfumes, silks, sweet preserves from Florence, each one carefully chosen. To the outside world, you are the picture of civility. Inside, you're studying her reactions like a scientist observing a specimen. You note what pleases her, what unsettles her, what she refuses to eat. You are patient, always patient. One evening, you walk past a mirror and catch your reflection. The girl from Florence is gone, replaced by someone unrecognizable. The softness has evaporated. In its place stands something sharper, colder, an intellect wrapped in lace. You smile faintly and whisper to your reflection, alchemy, after all, is not about gold. It's about transformation, and in the flicker of candlelight, you think you see the shadow of the woman you're becoming. A queen forged not by love or destiny, but by humiliation carefully distilled into power. Years pass, and you learn the rhythm of Diane's power as if it were a clock ticking beside your bed. Every decision Henry makes seems to echo her whispers, every decree bears her invisible signature. You, meanwhile, become the dutiful queen, smiling, silent, and endlessly pregnant. Your body becomes a battlefield of diplomacy, producing heirs to secure your position in a court that still treats you like an unwelcome guest. 10 children you bear, each one another chance to prove your worth, each birth accompanied by prayers that sound more like wagers. You start to notice how Diane congratulates you after each successful delivery, her tone sugar-coated, her eyes glinting like a blade. She sends you rosaries and lace gowns, the gifts of a woman confident she's untouchable. Henry praises her for her kindness, and you nod, because that's what good wives do. But deep down the venom grows thicker. You imagine her face sometimes as you scream through labour, her calm gaze hovering behind your eyelids like a curse. Historians still argue whether Diane and you shared a fragile peace or a slow, quiet war. Some suggest you came to respect her, others that you plotted against her from the start. Perhaps the truth sits somewhere between. The court certainly saw no open conflict. To the public eye, the king's mistress and his queen were bound by grace, symbols of refined femininity. But behind closed doors, small acts of cruelty filled the space between you. Delays in messages, servants reassigned, rumours planted with surgical precision. You turn your energy toward the future. The French think of queens as ornaments, but you decide to become infrastructure. You fund architects, scholars, and spies. You create a network that stretches from Paris to Rome, from taverns to monasteries. Even Diane doesn't suspect how much of France now bends quietly to your will. Your agents report on troop movements, foreign debts, noble feuds. You never sign the letters yourself. Your handwriting is as invisible as your ambition. Still, motherhood changes you. Not in the tender way poets describe, but in the brutal way nature intends. Each child born is a new line of defence, a fresh hostage in your war with the world. You love them, but strategically. You cradle them with the same calculation you apply to statecraft. Even as infants, you whisper lessons into their ears. Trust no one who calls you friend. Loyalty is a costume, and kindness a performance. Henry grows older, more powerful, and yet more predictable. Diane's hold on him deepens. He names her Duchess, showers her with estates, and even allows her to keep royal jewels meant for you. You pretend not to notice. You even compliment her choices in fashion. It's an art you've mastered, concealing fury beneath a velvet smile. You know the world doesn't expect passion from a queen, only composure. So you turn your rage into composure so perfect it frightens even you. On one rare afternoon, Diane invites you to her gardens. The two of you walk side by side, sunlight spilling through the trees like liquid gold. She speaks of beauty and virtue, her voice smooth as silk. You nod and listen, but your eyes catch on the deadly foxglove blooming by her path, a plant that can heal or kill, depending on the dose. You can't help but smile. There's poetry in that. She notices and asks why you're amused. You tell her, because even the most beautiful things can be poisonous. She laughs, unaware it's not a joke. Your children grow strong, your influence spreads, and yet Diane's shadow never lifts. You start to understand that some rivals aren't meant to be defeated in life. Some must simply be outlived. You tell yourself that patience will be your revenge, that the day will come when the crown passes not through love but through lineage. You will survive them all, and so, when you hear of Henry's latest jousting tournament, the one where he insists on wearing Diane's colours instead of yours, you don't protest. You merely watch from your balcony, quiet, knowing something deep inside you has already shifted. The night of your humiliation has turned into a lifetime of strategy, and soon, when the bells of Paris ring again, not for marriage but for massacre, you will remember the foxglove and finally understand its lesson. The bells toll again, but this time not for love. Their echoes roll over Paris like thunder, announcing the marriage of your daughter, Marguerite, to Henry of Navarre, a Protestant prince. To the outside world, it's a gesture of peace, an olive branch extended between Catholics and Huguenots. But you, Catherine, know better. You've lived long enough to understand that peace is often the mask worn by vengeance. You stand at the window of the Louvre, listening to those bells, remembering another wedding, another night, another promise. History, it seems, is about to repeat itself, only louder. The city swells with guests. Nobles from both sides arrive dressed in silks and suspicion. For a brief, shimmering moment, it almost feels like harmony. Catholic and Protestant sharing the same wine, the same laughter, the same illusions. But in every corner you can smell fear. You see it in the glances exchanged across banquet tables, in the way soldiers grip their hilts even during toasts. You, however, are calm. You have waited decades for this kind of stillness, the kind that comes just before a storm. Then the first spark catches. An assassination attempt on Admiral Coligny, a Protestant leader, fails but leaves him wounded. The city trembles. Henry demands justice. The Catholics demand blood. The balance teeters on the edge, and all eyes turn to you, the Queen Mother, the silent architect behind the throne. You tell them what they want to hear: restraint, investigation, patience. But your eyes say something different. They say do it. Historians still argue whether you ordered the massacre yourself or merely allowed it to happen. They debate letters, council records, testimonies. None of them were in that room when you looked into the faces of frightened nobles and said, "Then let them all perish, or we shall perish with them." Words soft as silk, heavy as lead. And so it begins. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. The bells toll again, but now they are the signal, not the celebration. Steel flashes in torchlight, shouts rise from the streets, and the Seine runs dark with secrets that will never be washed clean. From your chambers you hear it all. The pounding on doors, the screams, the thud of bodies hitting cobblestone. You don't move. You don't need to. You've set everything in motion already. They will call it madness, chaos, divine punishment. You know it for what it is. Arithmetic. Every death tonight balances a humiliation from your past. Every scream erases a whisper that once mocked your name. You imagine Diane's face, older now, her beauty fading, and wonder if she hears the same bells you do. Perhaps she's dreaming of Henry, of jousts and laughter. She doesn't know yet that the world you both built around him has finally collapsed. Outside, torches burn in the rain, their flames sputtering like dying stars. The scent of wet iron fills the air. You think of your wedding night, that single candle burning by your bed, and how its light trembled as Henry turned away. Now, all of Paris trembles the same way. You wonder if this is what power feels like, not triumph, but emptiness echoing where your soul used to be. By morning, the streets are quieter, though the silence feels heavier than the screams. You step outside briefly, wrapped in morning black, and look toward the horizon. The sun rises blood orange through the mist, like Florence reborn in fire. You whisper to no one, "It is done," and perhaps in that moment you believe it. You tell yourself that history will understand, that kings and queens must sometimes stain their hands to keep their thrones. But deep inside, a voice whispers otherwise. It asks if the massacre was vengeance or inheritance, if you acted freely or simply fulfilled the prophecy Nostradamus once murmured, that your destiny would bathe in blood and glory. You return to your chamber, close the window, and listen as the bells fade into silence. Paris will rebuild, you tell yourself. The court will adjust. The world will move on. But as you glance at the mirror, your reflection seems slightly different, paler, thinner, almost transparent. You wonder if the girl from Florence is still in there somewhere, or if she died the night her husband first turned away. Either way, you've kept your promise, you survived. The years after the massacre unfold like the fading light of a dying candle, slow, trembling, and strangely beautiful. Paris repairs its streets, washes the stones, rebuilds the facades, but the ghosts remain. You can feel them in the drafts that move through the halls of the Louvre, whispering in the language of the condemned. France calls you La Reine Noire, the Black Queen. To some, a ruler of brilliance and iron. To others, a sorceress who fed her children blood in place of milk. You neither confirm nor deny. Silence, after all, has always served you better than confession. Henry is gone now. A jousting accident, they say. A splintered lance through the eye. Diane's colours on his armour when it happened. The irony doesn't escape you. You watched the tilt unfold, the crowd's roar splitting the air, and when he fell you knew before the physician did. For a fleeting moment you felt the world go still, as if it were holding its breath. Then the blood came, and so did your calm. The mistress's reign ended that day. She was banished from court, stripped of jewels she once paraded as her birthright. You retrieved them quietly, one by one, setting them back into your coffers like reclaimed fragments of your soul. Historians still argue whether you truly mourned Henry, or merely wore the mask of widowhood well. Perhaps it was both. You had long since stopped loving the man, but not the idea of him, the vessel through which your power flowed. Without him, you must become both king and queen. The title doesn't change, but the tone does. France is yours now, though it comes at the cost of every heartbeat you ever wasted on tenderness. Your sons take the throne one after another, fragile boys raised in the shadow of your control. Francis II dies young, Charles IX dies haunted, Henry III grows suspicious of his own reflection. You rule through them all, the steady pulse behind trembling crowns. Ministers fear your glance, ambassadors await your nod. You move through council chambers like a ghost in velvet, speaking softly, but carrying centuries of cunning in every word. And yet in quiet moments, you catch yourself wondering when vengeance became habit. You think back to Florence, the nuns, the siege, the young girl who smiled at danger. You think of Diane's calm gaze, of Henry's first cold touch, of the wedding night that carved you open and left history bleeding through. Somewhere along the way, survival turned into appetite. You don't even remember when you stopped tasting guilt. The court around you evolves. Gone are the laughter and flirtations of youth. In their place, whispers of poison, plots and purges. You find yourself collecting apothecaries and astrologers the way others collect paintings. Some call you paranoid. You call it prepared. You keep small vials hidden in your sleeves, tiny glass relics filled with antidotes, or perhaps the opposite. No one dares ask which. You still visit Henry's tomb sometimes, not out of affection, but to remind yourself of the cost of weakness. His effigy stares upward, hands clasped in eternal piety. You almost laugh. He never prayed that sincerely in life. The marble beside him bears your likeness too, sculpted younger, softer, unreal. You stare at it and think, she was buried long before they made her statue. At night you wander through the halls alone, past portraits of kings, queens and courtiers who once mocked you. Their painted eyes follow you, their lips frozen mid-gossip. You whisper to them, half amused, half weary. I outlived you all. It's not triumph anymore. It's fatigue masquerading as victory. Power, you realise, is not something you hold. It's something that holds you. France remains divided, forever on the edge of collapse. You've spent decades stitching it together with fear and diplomacy, yet the seams still leak blood. You wonder if perhaps this is the true curse of the Medici, endless preservation of broken things, but then you straighten your back, adjust your widow's veil, and return to the council chamber. You are the last line of defence between chaos and crown, between myth and memory. And when they look at you, the frail old queen in black, they don't see the child from Florence, or the bride from Paris. They see the legend they created, the monster they whispered into being. You almost feel sorry for them. Almost. The final years creep in quietly, like dusk sliding through a half-open window. You, Catherine, are no longer the fierce young Queen of France, but a woman fading into shadow. Bones aching, lungs heavy, surrounded by courtiers who bow with sympathy they don't mean. The corridors that once pulsed with the rhythm of power now feel hollow, filled with echoes of laughter that isn't yours. You spend long evenings by the fire watching the flames dance and thinking, as you always do, about that single night in Paris, the one that began it all. You tell yourself it was only a wedding, only politics, but the truth is that something inside you splintered there and never healed. You dream often now. In these dreams, the candlelight of that first chamber flickers endlessly. Henry enters again, young and uncertain, and Diane's perfume follows him like a ghost trailing silk. Sometimes the three of you move in silence, orbiting one another like planets locked in a cruel constellation. Other nights it changes. The candle goes out before he reaches the bed, and you're left alone in the dark, whispering words you never said aloud. Forgiveness, maybe. or warning. When you wake, the room smells of old wax and lilies from the garden, and for a brief, disoriented second, you forget which century you're in. Historians still argue whether remorse ever touched you. Some call you calculating, others pragmatic, a few even compassionate in your own cold way. You wonder if they realise how thin those lines really are. You never wanted to be monstrous. You only wanted to survive. But survival, you've learned, is rarely gentle. It sharpens, it hollows, it leaves you walking through life like a blade that forgot it was once human. Your children are gone or distant now. Some buried, some at war, some turning their suspicions inward toward you. You hear them whisper that your influence is waning, that France needs renewal, not memory. You smile when you hear it. They said the same about your uncle, the Pope, before he outmaneuvered every enemy. They said the same about Florence before it gave birth to genius. You think perhaps decline is only another disguise power wears when it's bored. One afternoon, you ask to be taken to the gardens. The sky is the colour of pewter. The air smells of rain. You sit by a marble fountain and trace the rim with your fingers. The water ripples gently, reflecting your face. A mosaic of lines and stories too heavy to count. You lean close and whisper, "If the moon were kind, she'd have spared me that night." The breeze answers softly, carrying the scent of roses and foxglove, those twin symbols of beauty and poison. You almost laugh. It's fitting, you think, that even the flowers can't decide which they are. When evening falls, you return to your chamber and dismiss the servants. Alone, you light a single candle and place it by your bedside just as you did all those years ago. The flame trembles, small and uncertain, and for a moment you imagine it listening. You tell it everything, the secrets you buried, the names you silenced, the grief you disguised as strategy. You tell it that you never hated Diane as much as you hated being invisible, that every act of cruelty was only a way of saying, "See me." And as you speak, your voice grows softer, your eyes heavier, the candlelight blurring into a golden haze. The wax drips down in slow tears. You close your eyes and see Florence, sunlit and alive, where a little girl once watched rebels retreat and smiled. You see the wedding torches in Paris, the constellations you traced on maps, the faces of the sons who carried your crown but never your calm. You see everything, all at once, as if history itself were exhaling. When the candle finally gutters out, the night is silent again. The world outside keeps spinning, France keeps scheming, and the Black Queen becomes another portrait on the wall, a story to be retold in whispers. But for now, in this soft, eternal dark, you are finally still. And now, as the room fades and the last echoes of Catherine's footsteps drift away, take a breath. Let it be slow, like the settling dust after centuries of noise. The story you've just wandered through isn't only hers, it's the story of every heart that's ever been betrayed and learned to rule instead of break. You can still picture the candle, can't you? Its faint glow trembling against the velvet dark, a reminder that even the smallest light can make history quiver. So let your eyes soften. Imagine the halls of that old French palace empty now, the laughter long gone, the air gentle again. Somewhere, a curtain stirs, and beyond it, peace waits. Not loud, not grand, just quiet. The kind of peace that comes when the mind finally lets go of its own echoes. You've stayed awake through blood and silk, through secrets that refuse to die. But here, at the edge of sleep, none of it can touch you. The past is only a dream now, curling away like smoke. Sleep well, traveller. The world will still be here when you wake.